Still focusing on the state of democracy. In your opinion, sir, who or what is the single biggest threat to our democracy, even if we use that word democracy advisedly, because there is a general consensus amongst enlightened Nigerians, this is definitely not democracy. But the question is, who or what is the single biggest threat to the survival of this democratic experiment? Is it the legislature, the executive, or the judiciary?
Both.
When you mean both, you mean all of them?
All of them. You see, the principles of checks and balance is the safeguard of the survival of democracy. Now, the executive is supposed to implement laws. The only democratic institution is the legislature, because that is where the voices of the people have been surmised into constituencies. Now, they serve as a check on the judiciary and
particularly the executive.
The executive. They have influence of check because judgments of the court can be amended. Once a judgment is given and a law is made to amend the judgment, that judgment becomes invalid. So, but these three institutions are in cohort because from their conduct, it's suggested that all of them are in agreement. Why do I say this? The Supreme Court gave one judgment, which Tinubu celebrated, that President Tinubu has the power to remove governors. And Tinubu celebrated in the case of
Rivers State.
Rivers State.
I was going to ask you, but since you're already on it.
And we also know as a fact that the Supreme Court in the case of Joshua Dade versus the Plateau State House of Assembly stated that the president has no authority to dissolve a democratically elected government because the government is elected just like he is. It's a political entity that exists on its own just like. So if they have in this new judgment, which means they've overruled themselves, certainly.
Let me ask you, comrade, what would make the Supreme Court to have given this, let me borrow the word of a constitutional lawyer, a professor of constitutional law, a friend of mine, while we were having this conversation, he said the judgment, he described it as being perverse, that is a perverse judgment. Because what it is tantamount to conferring on the president that is above the Constitution of Nigeria. Could the framers of our Constitution, however this 1999 Constitution has amended is imperfect, however imperfect it is, could, in their wildest imagination, the framers have envisaged a day that some people would gather together and interpret it to mean that they, the framers, conferred on an individual powers above the ground norm? What could make the judges, their lordships, in their wisdom, to have given that judgment? What?
Well, I also want to share the thought of that, my senior colleague, the professor of law, who said the judgment was perverse. But beyond that, the judgment of the Supreme Court in the case of the Rivers State has established monarchy. That judgment established monarchy. And that judgment annulled the Constitution. That's the import of that judgment. It annulled the Constitution. So all other things that they are doing, the legislature is doing, is abracadabra. The import of that judgment has coronated Tinubu as a maximum ruler in Nigeria. He can do and undo. The only thing he cannot do is he cannot change a man into a woman. That's the import of that judgment.
By this inference, by this statement, now the inference from my first question is that, because for it and take in America, Donald Trump, with his, tyrannical excesses, he has a tendency to want to be a maximum ruler. But the only institution, as it were, standing between him and full-blown fascism has been the courts in America. Even lower courts, not even the Supreme Court. They've been, giving judgments to say, no, you can't do this, no, you can't deport American citizens to Venezuela or to El Salvador and all of that. They've been saying, no, you can't impose tariffs. No, you can't do this. Lower courts in America, circuit courts, not even Supreme Court. But here, just like you said now, I asked you again, comrade, and this is, scary for me, a lover of democracy. It's not perfect, but it approximates the best form of government that man has invented. What would have made the lordships to have come up with that judgment? Comrade, why?
Since the judgment of his lordship on this matter,
They are lordships.
yes, I have been as confused as to what was the ratio decidendi
Exactly.
of this case. What has changed from the case of
Judge
Darie,
Darie.
the case of
Ladoja
Ladoja Ibadan, and Fayoshe?
Fayoshe Nekiti.
Yes, what has changed? Because, of course, after some time, the Supreme Court can overrule itself,
Exactly.
yes, and change the principle to bring it in conformity, with social realities or political realities. What has changed? Worse still, in the case of Rivers, the president exhibited the worst tyranny, an attack on the Constitution, because the Constitution requires him to make a pronouncement of a state of emergency, send the Gazette to the National Assembly to be rectified in 48 hours. After the rectification, he will now appoint a sole administrator. Now, the appointment of a sole administrator had hitherto by the Supreme Court referred to as unlawful. So, state of emergency by our constitutional provision means the president will gazette steps he is going to take to deal with the extraordinary situation. And this may include deployment of the military. The democratic institutions will exist concurrently, but security will be taken over from the government and handed over to the military man. The president is going to be appointed to handle the military. But in this case, the president made a pronouncement. The Gazette has not even been sent to the National Assembly. In a cubicle in his office, he saw in a sole administrator and sent him to Rivers. These attacks on the constitutional provision, the procedure, would have offended the thoughts of his lordships. But till date, the wisdom of his lordship in coronating a monarch for Nigeria, up till now, I will wait for them maybe in subsequent decision, whether they are going to explain themselves. But for now, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the maximum authority. He's a king. He can declare a Nigerian a non-Nigerian by the import of the decision of the Supreme Court of Nigeria in the case of Rivers State, where it gave the president unfettered powers to remove and dismantle scattered elected institutions. In fact, we may wake up with the president, Ahmed Tinubu, dissolving the National Assembly. And he has the powers to do it.
Because, so that's a very far-reaching decision they took.
I'm telling you that our democracy had come under compromise. It's not a threat now.
But let's switch gears from that.
No, but the National Assembly has not pretended. The Nigerian National Assembly,
This current one.
yes, this 10th National Assembly, had not pretended
From the inception.
from day one that they are not in the armpit of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. They are in his pocket.
Wow.
And they are very proud of that. That's why once they see him in the National Assembly, they start singing. I've had a problem with so many people, but my own ears usually hear the song differently. But people say that was not what they used to sing. Because I used to hear them singing as if, on your dollar we shall stand, on your dollar we shall stand. They say that's not the song, but that's how I heard it. So this National Assembly, I don't want to discuss them because they have not pretended. They are anti the people. That was why they decided the emergency rule gazette with a voice vote. It took 2 days, 48 hours, for them to approve the state of emergency. That's the National Assembly, the then National Assembly in Plateau. Every member of the National Assembly made a submission. That's the requirement of the law. But this one, they said, the eyes have it. Bam! Then I'm going to send you something in your account. No, I'm going to send email to you.